Welcome back. Well, the country is still reeling from the cholera outbreak, which has left 21 people dead in Hammanskraal. Another person has died in the Free State as well. It has once again brought into sharp focus our water challenges, especially insofar as infrastructure is concerned. The disease, we're now told by experts, has also been detected in the Vaal River. Let's bring in water expert Professor Anthony Turton joins us for more on the story. It's unthinkable, isn't it, Prof, that in 2023 we're having an outbreak and we're seeing people die from a disease that is very, very treatable.
Good morning to you and the listeners. Yes, indeed, it's a human tragedy playing out, and I think history will possibly record this event as the 2023 national cholera crisis. And the reason why that's significant is because I think we might start seeing from this crisis the first legal culpability being assigned, for the loss of human life, directly coupled to corruption and malfeasance. So that is something that I think might well come out of this thing, but it's still early days to know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, just with the facts in front of us, it is exactly as you say. It's as a direct result of governance failures. As they say, corruption is never a victimless crime.
Yes, absolutely. And we know, whereas corruption up to now has generally been sort of swept under the, it's not really swept under the carpet, but it's generally been accepted by the public, as sort of kind of a victimless crime. So we shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's what happens. And we now have heard from the Director Eskom cases where, they spoke about these syndicates embedded in Eskom. And now we're starting to see, for example, syndicates embedded in different parts of the water sector, and in particular the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant. There's a syndicate that's been operating there for some time, and now, of course, if we can connect that up to the loss of life, then you suddenly have this whole thing about dolus eventualis. Where the consequences of your actions, if they take human life, then you've basically got a completely different kind of legal peril that you face if you are one of those perpetrators. So I think this is going in a very, very interesting direction, and it's possibly going to become a turning point in the water sector.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you talk about Eskom, because there really are so many parallels between what's unfolded insofar as our power crisis is concerned, and now this cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal. The issues around, for example, maintenance, and especially around water infrastructure. There have been warnings for years, I want to say for decades, that we were lagging behind in maintenance. And now we've gotten to the point where political parties are sort of getting their behinds in gear. Everyone is up in arms. But what it's taken to get there is the deaths of 22 people.
Yes, absolutely, and it's a great tragedy for those people and for their families. I mean, I can only express my deepest sympathy to those families on their loss, and I think it's really incumbent upon the rest of us to at least dignify that loss of life and bring something positive out of this. I might just say that we've been developing quite a good understanding of how these criminal syndicates work, and what seems to be coming out of the Hammanskraal case is the use of tankers. And so tankers are very, very interesting, because your tankers are operated, pardon me, tankers are operated as part of a syndicate typically linked to the transport industry. And we're seeing that in the coal industry, the same type of thing taking place there. And what these syndicates do is they actually profit out of the destruction of infrastructure. So we see it in KZN, for example, where they break infrastructure because they can then create a crisis, and that crisis then results in the awarding of a tanker contract. And then that tanker contract now becomes the new service provider. But now it gets more interesting, because initially the tankers are supposed to supply water from a proper potable water treatment plant. But now there's 20, 30 tankers in a row waiting to fill up at one standpipe, and they stand for hours on end doing nothing. So then the drivers start jumping the queue, and instead of filling up at the official standpipe, they go to the nearest river and they take water out of the river, and they just go and deliver it, because they get paid per load. So the more loads they can do in a day, the more turnover. So in other words, that we see happening already. We know that's happening. And indications are that in the Hammanskraal case now, that at least some of the people that have died claim not to have taken water from the tap, but rather water from a tanker. So therefore, we're closing that gap there. And then we're also closing that gap now on other investigations that have been ongoing into the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant, where there's been a known syndicate operating there for a while. So all of these things are kind of starting to come in together now. And, there are a lot of different forensic aspects to this that people are slowly tying the knots together. And I believe we might well see a situation in the future where we can actually take this matter to court.
Yeah. Syndicates and sabotage, these are sort of key words that come out of what you just said. And again, the parallels between the power crisis and the water crisis. City Power, for example, in Johannesburg, has told us time and time again that there are syndicates operating for the sole purpose of not getting to the point where we can fix the power crisis. In fact, they are most likely behind all of the damaged infrastructure that we're seeing. Because, of course, there are people who benefit from contracts that see them going out to fix these man-made crises insofar as power is concerned. We're seeing the same reports now with the water crisis, that it's not in some sectors' interest. There are people who are thriving on the water crisis as they are from the power crisis, and it's not in their interest that we fix these issues.
Exactly. So the bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity for these syndicates. We need to understand that there's a direct correlation between the magnitude of the crisis and then the quantum of cash that can be diverted. Then the second step in that process now is if there's a big enough crisis, then a state of emergency or a state of disaster can be declared. And as soon as you declare a state of disaster, the third part of the problem kicks in now, and that is that you start bypassing the normal procurement procedures because this crisis is so big. So this is all, if this had to be presented to an impartial judge in a court of law by competent attorneys, it would be a very, very strong case. But now for the first time, we're starting to get actual loss of life. And that loss of life, that's a different category of crime now. And that loss of life, if that can be forensically linked to these things now you're getting that whole long chain of cause and effect, etc. So, I think it's a very interesting case. I mean, interesting is maybe the wrong word to use because it's sort of suggests an insensitivity towards the loss of life. But at least if we can dignify the loss of life in some way by bringing something good out of this and cleaning up the system, taking this cancer out of the system and just sort of restoring basic goods and services. And I'll just say one more thing that I'm on the record of saying, I'll say it again now. We have a situation now where we have the ruling African National Congress as the party in power, but not the party in control. They're in power, but they're not in control. And that's an important thing because the control is actually vested now with these criminal syndicates. So you've got this symbiotic relationship between the political process and the criminal process. And this is widely contested by the senior people. But there's more and more and more evidence coming forward. And I'll say this. Facts are always our friends. The facts will ultimately lead to all of the connection of all of these dots, and the house of cards will eventually come tumbling down.
It's why we're seeing so many analysts weigh in around discussions concerning South Africa becoming a mafia state because of exactly what you've just described. So, Prof, as we end off our conversation this morning, if you take a look at water infrastructure, not just in Gauteng, but around the country. There have been various reports over the years, in the Western Cape as well, about the fact that we're gonna pay in the future for the fact that there is this lack of maintenance insofar as our water infrastructure is concerned. If you can give us a broad look at the country and our water security and link it to the maintenance issue, how would you paint that picture?
Okay, look, it's a complex topic. I'm going to be very superficial in this thing. What I will say is that we are paying for it already now. We're not paying in the future. We are paying for it now. So I'll just put the following on record. The first thing is that it's going to cost us in the immediate short term at least R1 trillion, R1 trillion, just to fix what is broken. Not to improve it, just to fix what is broken. And the fiscus doesn't have that. The economy is collapsing because of the energy crisis. It's collapsing because of the unintended consequence of the lockdown, the COVID-19 lockdown. So that's the first thing that's happening. And the second thing that's going to happen that we're already paying for now is we've got probably a 50% unemployment rate amongst our youth today. So half of the kids coming out of school today with matric are unlikely to get a job in their entire life, all things being equal at the moment. And the reason for that is quite simple. Why would any investor in their right, logical, rational mind put capital into South Africa where there's unstable electricity and there's no water supply? So the water supply and the energy supply, the stability of those, these are two national security matters, and they are also matters of extreme importance for any investment future. So unless we get that right, we're not going to be able to grow our economy. We're not going to be able to attract capital back into our economy, and we're going to remain a water, energy and capital-constrained economy going into the future, and that is a tragedy for every single South African.
It does appear that the bad news just keeps on coming in. Let me thank you for your time. Professor Anthony Turton joining us this morning to unpack what is the latest crisis we're facing, this time in Hammanskraal with the cholera outbreak there, already claiming the lives of 21 people, another person in Paris.